Here's a question nobody asks you out loud. How much is an hour of your life worth? Not what your boss pays you, not what LinkedIn says your skills are worth, the actual number. The cost and time on earth of the things you own. Most people have never done that math, and once you do, you can't really undo it. In 1992, two people nobody had heard of published a quiet little book that asked exactly that question. It did not promise you riches. It did not tell you to hustle harder. It told you something much more uncomfortable, that most of what you call a career is actually a trade, and that you might be getting a very bad deal. The book was called Your Money or Your Life. And it is somehow more relevant now than it was 30 years ago. Let's talk about WHY. Vicki Robin was 26 years old when she met Joe Dominguez. He was a Wall Street analyst. She was a theater student. They were, by most measures, nothing alike, but they shared a single obsession, figuring out why the people around them seemed miserable despite having everything. Joe had already done the experiment on himself. By the time he was 31, he had saved enough money to stop working entirely, not because he won the lottery, not because he built a startup. He just looked at what he actually needed to live and decided the number was much smaller than what culture had told him it was. He retired on a modest fixed income and spent the rest of his life doing what he wanted. In 1969, at 31, he and Vicki spent the next 2 decades refining this into a framework, not a theory. A practice, a set of questions and calculations that, once you start doing them, tend to reorder your priorities in a way that is difficult to reverse. The book they eventually wrote sold over 1 million copies. It went out of print. Then the financial crisis of 2008 brought it back. Then the pandemic made it a bestseller again. There is a pattern there worth noticing. So what is the actual framework? Let me walk you through it because the summary you'll find online does not do it justice. Step 1, figure out your real hourly wage, not the gross number on your contract, your real wage, the one that accounts for the full cost of going to work. Take your salary, now subtract taxes. Now subtract commuting costs. Now subtract the cost of work clothes, work lunches, the gym membership you only got because the job is stressful, the streaming services you binge on Friday nights because you're too exhausted to do anything else, the convenience food you buy because you have no time to cook. Subtract the hours of decompression you need after a hard day. Subtract the vacation you take not because you want to go somewhere but because you desperately need to stop. Now divide what's left by the actual number of hours that job consumes from your life. Most people who do this calculation find that their real hourly wage is somewhere between a third and a half of what they thought it was. Some people, after accounting for a brutal commute and the lifestyle inflation that comes with a high-pressure career, find it is actually lower than what they were making at their first job out of college. This is not a polemic against work, it is just arithmetic, and arithmetic does not care about your feelings. Step 2 is where it gets genuinely strange. Robin and Dominguez ask you to do something almost no one does. They ask you to look at every purchase you make not in dollars but in HOURS of life, that $60 dinner. Is it worth 2 hours of your real time on Earth? The new car, is it worth 8 months? The mortgage. Is the house, not the home but the physical asset, worth the 11 years of your working life that will go toward paying for it? They are not telling you the answer is no. They are telling you that you should know the answer. That you should be making a conscious trade, not a reflexive one driven by advertising, social comparison, and a vague anxiety that you are falling behind some invisible standard. Here is the concept they built the whole book around. They called it the crossover point. The moment when your passive income, investment returns, interest, whatever, equals your monthly expenses. That is the moment you are, in their language, financially independent. Not rich, not wealthy, just free. The job becomes optional. You can stop, you can keep going, but you are choosing, not trapped. The path to that crossover point, they argued, was not about making more, it was about needing less. And the key insight, the one that made the book feel radical in 1992 and still feels radical now, was that needing less is not deprivation. It is clarity. It is knowing what you actually value versus what you have been told to value by people who profit from your confusion. Now here is the uncomfortable math. The part the book's cheerful summaries tend to glide past. The original edition assumed you would put your savings into long-term U.S. Treasury bonds. In 1992, those bonds yielded around 8% annually. Do the math. A modest savings of $300,000 would generate $24,000 a year, enough to live simply. Enough to be free. Today that same $300,000 in a 10-year treasury yields something closer to 4%, about $12,000 a year. The crossover point has moved. The math has changed, the target got bigger, the returns got smaller, and everything in between got more expensive. Housing, healthcare, education, all of it. Robin, who is still alive and still thinking about these questions, has acknowledged this. The framework has been updated. The index fund replaced the treasury bond. The community aspect of frugality has been emphasized more, but the core tension remains. The book was written in an era where this path was difficult but achievable for a middle-income person with discipline. Today, for many people, especially younger ones in high-cost cities, the arithmetic requires either a very high income, an extremely low cost of living, or a willingness to make choices that genuinely alienate you from mainstream culture. That is a real constraint and worth naming honestly, but there is something else going on here, something the book did not quite predict and that has only become more visible since. The ideas in Your Money or Your Life did not stay in the book. They escaped, they mutated, they became the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. A community of spreadsheets, forums, and podcasts built around the same core logic. Now populated by software engineers optimizing their savings rate to the decimal point and debating the precise withdrawal rate that will sustain their portfolio for 60 years. Some of it is genuinely useful, some of it has become its own kind of performance. A different scoreboard, but a scoreboard, the obsessive tracking of net worth milestones, the competitive frugality. The identity built around a number in a brokerage account rather than the question the book was originally asking, which was, what kind of life do you actually want? Robin has said in interviews that she finds some of what FIRE became a little baffling. The original book was not really about retiring early, it was about waking up. About building what she called enough, not maximum, not optimal enough, the difference matters. Maximum is always moving, enough theoretically is reachable. Here is the thing about a book like this that endures for 3 decades across multiple economic crises. It is not enduring because it has the best investment strategy. Plenty of books have better investment strategies. It is enduring because it is pointing at something that does not go away. A structural mismatch between the life most people are living and the life they would choose if they stopped to ask. The work culture that surrounds us was not designed with your well-being as the primary variable. It was designed to be productive. Those are sometimes the same thing, often they are not. And the gap between them, the gap where your real hourly wage lives, where your crossover point hides, where the question your money or your life becomes something you actually have to answer. That gap is not closing. If anything, it is widening. The average American now works more hours than they did in 1990. They have more stuff. Their reported levels of life satisfaction have not increased proportionally. This is not controversial. The data is consistent across DECADES and countries. Something is not adding up. That was the book's argument in 1992. It remains the book's argument now. So what do you do with that? Robin and Dominguez would say, do the calculation, find your real hourly wage, track your spending not to punish yourself but to see clearly. Ask for each thing you buy, is this worth it? Not in some abstract moral sense, but in the specific personal sense of your actual values. And then sit with what the numbers tell you. That is the practice. It is not glamorous. There is no 3-step system, no morning routine, no hack. Just the slow, slightly uncomfortable process of figuring out what you actually want and whether what you are doing is moving you toward it. Most people never do this, not because they are foolish. Because it is genuinely unsettling, because the answer might require change. Because it is easier to keep earning and spending and hoping that the feeling of being trapped will eventually resolve itself if the salary gets high enough. It usually does not. The book has been making that point for 30 years, and here is the question it leaves you with, the one that has no comfortable answer. If you calculated your real hourly wage tonight, if you converted the things you own into hours of your life, if you found your crossover point and understood what it would actually take to reach it, would you want to know? Or is not knowing the point?